From these two races, we still have as too close to call. Steve Kornacki remains at the big board. Steve, do you see anything developing here that could be called a trend?
Well, we have a very, very big and clear, outstanding piece of real estate. Let me take you through what we're waiting on and how it's going to affect what you're looking at right here. So what you're looking at right now is that with 80% of all the vote counted up here in Georgia, Kelly Loeffler, the appointed Republican incumbent, with a 43,000 vote advantage over Raphael Warnock. 43,000 is the Loeffler lead in this race. In the other race, the lead for David Perdue sitting at 70,000 votes here. Perdue, the Republican incumbent, over Jon Ossoff, a 70,000 vote lead, 2-point margin with 80% of the vote in. We have seen Republicans building and building this number over the last 2 hours or so. Rural areas have filled in, ex-urban areas, all the red you see on this map filling in. That brings me to the big, outstanding piece of real estate. So take a look at it this way. Where is the remaining vote in the state of Georgia? The bigger the bubble, the more vote there is. If you can see, I'm going to expand it right here. There is one bubble that is just clearly much bigger than all of them, and that's this bubble right here. Basically, this bubble that you're looking at is a quarter. It is 1/4 of all of the outstanding votes in the state of Georgia. What is this bubble? This bubble is DeKalb County. DeKalb County, what is it? It is one of the most overwhelmingly Democratic counties in the state of Georgia. You can see with 37% of the vote tallied here, Jon Ossoff is getting 82.8% of the vote. Raphael Warnock, again, doing about a half a point better, sitting on 83.4% of the vote. That is about what a Democrat should be getting out of this county. Biden got 83% of the vote. So what is left to come in DeKalb County here? Again, it's about a quarter of all the vote remaining in the state. The early vote is left to be reported out in DeKalb County. How many early votes are there? It's not quite, but it's a little bit south of 200,000 votes. We're going to say about 190,000 remaining votes in DeKalb County. Again, about 190,000 Democrats we expect are going to win those votes overwhelmingly. When you see 83% here for Warnock, that's about the clip we're talking about right here. Democrats, again, this is an 80% plus Democratic county, a huge, huge, huge batch of votes sitting there. Now, what do they do in DeKalb County? Typically, at the end of the night, when they have finished counting everything up, the last thing that they tally and report out is the early vote. And that we believe that's what we're waiting on right now. As a point of reference, in the 2020 general election, back in November, they released their big batch of early vote at 1:35 in the morning. Now, they have been, DeKalb and all of the other counties have been on a much quicker pace than they were back in November. So we don't expect that's going to be 1:35 a.m. this time. But it will be the last big, we think, the last big vote to be released out of DeKalb County. We are keeping an eye on this because the minute it comes in, that bubble is going to shrink and those Democratic numbers statewide are going to move, and they're going to move very quickly. So again, think about that. 190,000 or so votes in DeKalb County. Democrats, you're looking conservatively probably at 80% of them, okay? And you look at the gap right now that Warnock faces, it's 40,000. You look at the gap that Ossoff faces, it's nearly 70,000. You can make that up in DeKalb County. Now, if you take DeKalb County out of it, where else are we looking at votes? The next biggest outstanding piece of real estate here is Cobb County. A little more than half of Cobb County is in. We've been counting up same-day vote, election day vote in Cobb County. That's the most pro-Republican, the least pro-Democrat. But again, are Democrats going to finish above that Biden number, the remaining vote in Cobb County? Where else are we looking for votes? Republicans may gain some here. This is dot in Columbia County. You can see it looms larger and larger. Now, this number should come down. You don't have the mail vote in here right now, so there's an opportunity for Democrats. They won't do as badly, I think, in the rest of the vote in Columbia County, but Republicans could get some vote there. You could certainly get vote in these smaller bubbles you see in North Georgia. But a huge, and Gwinnett, I should say Gwinnett County, the smaller bubble buried behind that giant bubble. Same-day vote in Gwinnett County. That will make up what is to come here to get that up to 100%. Again, that will, we think, favor Democrats as well. So Democrats can gain some in Gwinnett, potentially some in Cobb. This is a place where Republicans could gain in Columbia. Republicans could make some gains collectively when you add up together all these rural North Georgia counties, some rural counties here as well. But Huge, by far the single biggest outstanding piece of real estate. You are looking at it right there. It's DeKalb County. It's the early vote. It's not quite 200,000 votes. It's typically released in one giant batch. It is expected to be extremely, extremely Democratic. So when you are staring at statewide margins of David Perdue sitting at 76,000 votes, and you're staring at Kelly Loeffler looking at 48,000 votes, know that when you get DeKalb, that is likely to change considerably. And I think Democrats certainly very much alive in this right now.
And, Steve, in terms of the expectations for DeKalb, is there any reason to set logistical expectations in terms of when they might get to that vote?
Yeah, so we're trying to find out if there's an estimate coming from the county again in November, and they were slower. The earlier releases of the vote that we've seen from DeKalb tonight, they came in earlier than they did in November, but it was 1:35 in the morning in November that they released all at once that early vote. And that's the early vote that we're waiting on right now. That's what they do. They wait till the end, then they release the early vote. So it was 1:35 in the morning. My gut here, just based on the trend you're seeing in DeKalb and elsewhere, is there's several hours ahead of that. So my gut is we're not waiting anywhere near that long, but trying to get an answer here, see if we can get some information on that. But I think if past is prologue, the way they typically do it in DeKalb is all at once in one giant batch. So I think that potentially could come in and move these numbers in a hurry.
Steve, can you zip down to Savannah for a second? Just tell us what's going on there in terms of what's outstanding there.
Yeah, take a look here. So Chatham County, we got about 70% of the vote in Chatham County. I believe there is some same day, and I can just check here quickly with my spreadsheet. And there is some same day vote to come in Chatham County. These Democratic numbers, they're a little bit ahead of Biden right now. Will they stay ahead of the Biden number? This was one, Chatham County that we were waiting on days in November. We're at a faster pace in Chatham County than we were. But so there's a possibility here. The bubble you see in Chatham County, it's not a bad sized bubble here, just relative to the other counties. And if you're a Democrat, you're looking at it, and those should be a gain for Democrats. From Chatham County, Democrats should gain. You can see there's a little bit left on the other side of the state. I can enlarge it. That's Muskogee County right there. You got a little bit left in Muskogee County. This is where Columbus, Georgia is. This is where Warner Robins is. And again, now this one we talked a little bit about earlier. I think it's going to skew a little bit more Republican in terms of what's left in Warner Robins. And again, there's just a few more. Columbia County, I believe I mentioned, that should be Republican. And this is Bartow County. Again, this will be core Republican. There are places here for Republicans to still make some gains of their own. I think depending on the sequence here, if DeKalb came in right now, if we just got DeKalb in the next minute, Warnock would zoom into the lead, Ossoff would zoom into the lead, and then Democrats would be trying to hang on for dear life with what's left, some of these Republican counties that are left here. But just looking at the numbers that you see right now, by itself, DeKalb would be more than enough to lift Democrats to the lead with the deficits they're facing right now. Just you have to caution that by saying it's not just DeKalb that's left. That's by far the biggest chunk of it. There are some other chunks here. Some of them are favorable to Democrats. Some of them are very favorable to Democrats. Take a look at Gwinnett. Take a look at Cobb. Take a look down at Chatham County, Muskogee County. But there are some Republican spots left here as well. So let's see how big of a bang Democrats get out of DeKalb County. And again, the sequence here is anyone's guess. Maybe it's the first thing that comes in, and then we're seeing if Democrats can hang on, or maybe this Republican lead gets bigger and bigger, and it's the last thing that comes in, and we're seeing if there's enough there to put Democrats over the top.
Okay, let's bring into the conversation Maria Teresa Kumar, the president and CEO of Voto Latino, our longtime friend here, especially on these election nights. Maria Teresa, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here. Tell us what you are both seeing tonight in these results, as Steve has been explaining them, but also what you're hearing on the ground in Georgia tonight.
So I have to share with Rachel, your sigh was a collective sigh of all of America holding tightly, trying to say what is going to happen. And it's hard to believe, but I feel like we have these election nights together, and it hasn't stopped since 2016. So bear with me. What I mean by this, though, is that the reason we're talking about Georgia is because of the massive demographic shifts that we are seeing that just didn't simply exist in 2016. In fact, since 2016, we've seen an increase in 25% of African-American registered voters and an 18% increase in Latino voters, most of them coming of age. And that has resulted in organizing across the board. You're seeing a lot of organizations coming from the Democratic Party outside of the state coming in, but you have a lot of great on the ground networks that have been doing this because they see the demographics, and they also see the need to participate because they are being left out of really important policy. But here's what's really interesting. When we're talking about the Mid-Atlantic region right now, in Mid-Atlanta region, for example, 90% of the vote is they basically are punching above their weight. They have 90% of the vote from the general. Warnock is 5% higher than Biden turnout. Then you look at conversely at Washington County, which is a GOP toss-up. Ossoff is leading by 2.4% from Purdue, but that is a place that Biden had won by 0.7%. Technically, Ossoff is higher than even Biden, and even Forsyth, where you see the Republicans winning, their participation rate is 2% less than Trump. So while we're talking about all of, or on pins and needles, overall, you're seeing the Democratic Senate nominees. They are on the cusp of actually surging because you see so much more turnout than we expected. I don't believe that the election is going to be decided today. And I know that this is what people don't want to hear, but there's roughly 17,000 ballots from overseas and military personnel that are still outstanding, and they don't expect them to arrive by Friday. If they don't arrive by Friday, technically, if they arrive by Friday, we'll still be counting. I know that's not what folks want to hear, but I have to say that Georgia is a testament of investment of individuals coming in from all around the country and really knocking on doors and saying, Georgia, we need you to participate because we need to make sure that Biden has a Senate that he can work with, that Biden can actually pass the health care relief that you need, that he actually can attest and understand the issues that you're facing, because sadly what we're seeing right now in the Republican Party is not just obstructionism, but really not really understanding what is happening in the majority of the American people. It all hangs on Georgia.
And excellent point about the investment here and the way that investments work, not in an allegory and in this allegory, is that you don't necessarily know exactly when they're going to pay off. It may not be the exact cycle that you're working in. It may not be the next cycle. It may not be the general election. It may be a runoff or a special. But when you do the work, ultimately, you reap the rewards. Maria Teresa Kumar, President and CEO of Voto Latino. It's great to see you. Thanks, Maria Teresa. It's good to see you.
Great to see you, Rachel. Thank you.
Also, Maria Teresa made a great point there about overseas and military votes. Right now in Georgia, people who had submitted their ballots, no matter how they did so, whether it was early in person or in person on Election Day or absentee or drop boxes, they had to have them in by today. It is overseas and military voters in Georgia, though, who have a couple more days for their ballots to arrive. If these races end up as close as they look like tonight, it may be that we're waiting for those overseas and military votes, potentially provisional ballots as well, before we are done with the count here. All right, we're back now. I just want to say, I think before we go back to Steve Kornacki right now, we're looking again for new votes out of DeKalb County. But I want to check in. Wait, are we going back to Steve right now? I'm sorry. I'm completely wrong. I've confused myself. Steve, I understand you have news.
Just on DeKalb County, because this is really shaping up as the ball game here, I think. And we said, look, we're waiting on what we think will be one giant release of the early vote in DeKalb County. We're talking a little south of 200,000 votes. We said, what time is it going to come? We just talked to an official from the county who says, and I want to get the wording right here, that they are expecting a significant release of vote before 11 o'clock Eastern time, sometime in the next 45 minutes. So again, they're not saying it's going to be all of it, but that is the way it has worked in the past in DeKalb County. When they get to the end of the night of counting, the thing that's left is the early vote. It all gets released at once. It didn't happen until 1:30 in the morning on Election Day. They're telling us they got a big release coming sometime this hour. And again, we are talking about a county. The Democrats are getting more than 80% of the vote in. We are talking about just short of 200,000 votes potentially being counted here. The Democrats getting the overwhelming share of them. And so, again, we're in a situation where that Republican lead is ticking up. Coweta County, we got the final precincts of Cherokee County. Some more Republican areas have come in. Purdue leads by nearly 87,000 votes statewide. Loeffler leads by 58,000 votes statewide. Those are significant leads, except when you have to take into account nearly 200,000 votes from a county that's more than 80% Democratic. We are going to get those, we think, in the next 45 minutes or so, and we will see what it does to that statewide leaderboard.
Wow.
You heard the man. Look away now at your peril. Go to bed now at your peril. Watch anything else at your peril. So we're expecting that within this hour. Quick break for us. We'll come back with races in the state of Georgia that have occupied our time and attention tonight. In our last segment, we were told in no uncertain terms by Steve Kornacki that in these next 40 or so minutes remaining in this hour, we're probably going to learn of a whole mess of votes out of DeKalb County, Georgia. Steve, no reason to think anything else, right? Yo, Steve.
Well, I'm sorry. There's one of those, the audio. Thank you, Bryce. Let's take a look here. This is setting up for some finish, and not just the close election, is the entire Senate on the line here. David Perdue, 94,000 and change. Again, we got some more. We got a little bit more at Gwinnett County, Blue County here in the Atlanta metro area, offset by some more Republican votes coming in as well. That's what's happened in the last few minutes. The Perdue lead is now sitting near 100,000 votes, 86% of the vote in statewide. Kelly Loeffler, 64,000 vote lead over Raphael Warnock. Again, DeKalb County, when I'm saying this is setting up for some finish, we just got 17, is this 17,000? What did we just get? We got 17,000 more votes in DeKalb. This is different than we were expecting. We were expecting all at once. We did not get all at once. So you can see now incrementally, they've released more vote. This is a relatively small share of what was left to come from DeKalb. They still have 60% of the vote to come in DeKalb. Warnock at 82.2%. Ossoff at 81.4%. You can see statewide, 94,000 is the lead for Perdue, and Loeffler the lead, 67,000. So again, we are still waiting on about 60% of the vote now, 60% of the vote out of DeKalb County, which I want to go find out if this was the batch that they were telling us was being released. I must say it's a disappointing batch. I thought it would be bigger in size. So we want to see what is still to come in DeKalb. I'm sorry, say again? And we have a little bit more coming in Cobb County as well, up to 75% of the vote there in Cobb County. And again, Democrats, you see that same day vote's been coming in. The Democratic number now down close to that number Biden had. They want to be at that number or above that number. But let's find out here if that was the update we were going to get from DeKalb this hour, because I was in the past, they've put it all out at once, and I thought that's what we were going to get here. But this is still more than 50, about 60% of the vote left to come in DeKalb County. This is the biggest thing left to be settled in the state. Again, that margin statewide, that DeKalb batch of votes that just came in, you can see that cut the lead. That's 67,000 votes right now. That's the Loeffler lead, and the lead here statewide for Perdue is 97,000. So again, DeKalb waiting on it. And let's see if that was the one that was promised this hour. I thought we were going to get the rest of it. We still have a ton left there.
So, Steve, are you literally going to go text DeKalb County right now and say,
we're going to go, maybe pick up the phone here the old-fashioned way, but we'll try to get an answer on that.
Okay. A little peek behind the curtain. Steve wants to know if that's it. They said it was going to be big. That didn't seem that big. All right. We're joined now once again by our friend Chris Hayes, the host of All In here on MSNBC. Chris, I feel like we are seeing this thing that Democratic activists have talked about for lots of years that you and I have been on TV covering election nights, which is Georgia becoming purple, right? I mean, we've had, I think it's 8 different statewide runoff elections in Georgia back to 1988. Democrats won one of those, and the Democrat who won that one of them quickly became a Republican and is still a Republican elected official today. Republicans have run the table. It's possible they will win both these Senate races tonight, but the fact that it's coming down this close and that it's this down to the wire and that there's this much suspense, they were promising this for a long time before it happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable to sort of chart the trajectory here. This is, of course, a state that gave us Jimmy Carter, that Bill Clinton won in 1992, the last vestiges of sort of vestigial white Southern Democratic voting. And then by 2004, you have Zell Miller, who'd been the popular Democratic governor of that state, who switches over to become a Republican. That's the kind of capstone moment for the Republican switch, right? Newt Gingrich, who sort of leads the revolution revolution in the House, of course, from Georgia, too. That was so much of what built the sort of backbone of Republican congressional majorities when they had them, was that switch of the old South, the old solidly Democratic South, to the Republican Party. And then in 2008, I was down in Georgia because the Obama campaign had actually opened up field offices there. Because what they did was they looked at the map. They said, this state is 31% African American. If we could drive turnout, if we could register voters, we could be within spitting distance. And even though Barack Obama lost that race in Georgia, they ended up pulling those field offices to concentrate on other states. He came fairly close. 6 years later, in 2014, I was back in Georgia with a state representative, state senator named Stacey Abrams. And her pitch was, look at the math. We have a lot of voters, African-American voters, who are not registered. We have a state where it's hard for them to vote. If we could register them and turn them out, we make this a swing state. That was 2014. It took a while, well, relatively short in historical terms, but several election cycles to get to that very close loss for Stacey Abrams in 2018, where she implemented that vision, lost by, I think, about 60,000 votes in the end. And now here we are. I mean, whatever tonight is, it is the culmination of that work, and I think the kind of official announcement of this as a genuinely competitive battleground political atmosphere, that November wasn't a fluke, that 2018 hotly contested race of Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp wasn't a fluke. This is the nature of this state now. And it alters a lot about the sort of calculations and trajectories of both national political parties and the coalitions they're assembling.
Mm-hmm. And it also raises the stakes for Republicans to try to reverse it if they can. And if one of the outcomes of all of the noise about Trump having had this race stolen from him in Georgia is that Georgia Republicans get back up on their hind legs and start doubling, tripling down on voter suppression to try to reverse these things, well, then Georgia is going to be voting wars for a long time to come because the stakes are just that high. Well,
and I have to say, I mean, you wonder about the relationship between the two. I mean, I am not of the belief generally that there's a huge amount of public opinion or political consequences for anti-democratic behavior. I think it's one of the founders' insights that actually has borne out pretty well. But let's be clear here. Kelly Loeffler's position, her official position, is that the votes cast to put her in this runoff, the votes of Georgians, should be discarded. That was Perdue's position essentially as well. Loeffler, though, making that big announcement at the Trump rally that she's going to contest the Electoral College. I mean, at the margins, I think telling the voters of your state that you don't get to say who you voted for, I think may not be the best approach to take. I think that probably turns some voters off.
Chris Hayes, thank you, my friend. Much appreciated. While we have been talking, Steve, did you call DeKalb County?
Yes, we got some more information from DeKalb County. You could just see the bubble here is growing bigger and bigger because we keep getting votes in from everywhere else in the state and just finishing out counties. This enormous bubble is DeKalb County. So we were saying, the early vote, about 180,000 votes or so yet to come from DeKalb County. They'd been saying a big update, a significant update by 11 o'clock, and then we got a very, very small update in the scheme of things a few minutes ago. That small update that we got is not the one that they have been telling us is coming at 11. They still say that sizable release of vote is coming before 11. They did clarify, though, it is not going to be all of the remaining early vote at once. So it's not going to all come at once, the remaining early vote. That has happened there in the past. But you can expect sometime in the next half an hour, we're going to get a significant chunk of that outstanding. I mean, and there it is, just proportionally. That giant circle is the outstanding early vote in DeKalb County, which, again, we expect Democrats to be winning at an 80 or 85% clip. And you just see that Perdue's lead statewide sits at about 100,000. Loeffler's lead statewide sits at about 70,000, 180,000 or so early votes. Democrats winning a mid-80% or so. You can do the math. You can see how this is going to get very close.
We're on the edge here. We want to let everyone know that no matter what discussion we're having on the air, we're watching it. We'll go immediately back if we see that percentage number change. Let's bring in two more special guests, and that's former chairman of the Republican National Committee, Michael Steele, and former Obama White House press secretary, Robert Gibbs. Robert, we haven't talked to you yet. Thank you for your patience. What do you like tonight?
Well, I think exactly what Steve's been saying. I mean, these races are extraordinarily close, and the whole ball game is DeKalb County. lots of vote to come in. I would much rather be sitting in the Democratic headquarters tonight right now than in the Republican headquarters, knowing this is a little bit of what we saw in November, a race that was tracking very close, and then a lot of these early votes that get reported late come in, and you get close results. But I feel pretty good sitting where we do right now.
Michael Steele, Donald Trump's going to speak to a rally tomorrow in Washington in the morning. If this does not go the Republicans' way, what does he have left in his bag to pull out? What does he have left to tell the crowd?
The blaming will begin. He will blame the Secretary of State. He will blame the governor. He will blame political operatives on the ground that didn't adhere to his wishes earlier in the process to, flip the vote in Georgia. He will discount and largely ignore any hand he may have had rhetorically or otherwise in sort of stemming the tide of the vote, the Republican vote. In a state, as I said on election night, the Republican Party should win. This should not be close. This should not be a conversation for us at this point. In fact, Brian, we should be going for beers right about now because the evening would have been over. And the reality of it is it's not, because of what this president has done to the Republican Party. And I'll say it one more time so every Republican will understand this has happened the way it has happened because you've allowed it to happen this way. And instead of holding the line on the principles that have defined the party, that the base and Republicans and center-right voters around the country, and certainly in a state like Georgia, could lean into, you gave them a reason to lean away.
It's put so starkly, it takes your breath away. Robert Gibbs, but I want to follow up on that point in the context of what President-elect Biden will inherit, regardless of which way these races go tonight. The information stream has been so poisoned by what Michael Steele just described. Mm-hmm. And it's President-elect Biden who has publicly declared his intention to govern for all Americans, including the ones that didn't vote for him. It seems to me that that task continues to get harder. There's reporting that's broken tonight. Donald Trump is now rapidly responding to the New York Times reporting that Vice President Pence told him that there was nothing in his ceremonial role tomorrow that he could do to change the result. His war on democracy is ongoing. We are just getting around to calling it what it is, which is a coup attempt. Is it your opinion that President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris are clear-eyed about what they're inheriting in terms of what the public believes, that millions of them don't believe they won in a fraud-free election, which is the fact? And do you believe that they've been strong enough in calling Trump's efforts what they are, an attempted coup?
Nicole, it's a great question because I've thought a lot about it over the last few days. I think if I was part of the incoming Biden administration, as I was in the incoming Obama administration, I would probably want to play it down and just get to the 20th of January at noon, because there's a lot that's going to happen tomorrow, and your viewers should understand it might be some interesting TV, but the result of tomorrow is going to be the certification of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to be the next president and vice president of this country. Lots of shenanigans. That having been said, I do greatly worry that we as Democrats are letting the normalcy of what is happening become normal. I mean, we're lauding. I mean, the New York Times is running a story, and the president is saying that story is not true, that the vice president is going to play the role the vice president plays in certifying the election. That's a New York Times story. That is a moving of the normalcy goalposts, as we've seen in almost every day of the Trump administration. We're lauding people if they come out and say, I am not going to object to the certification of the presidential vote. Again, that's a moving of the norms. And I have no doubt that a huge thing that the Biden and Vice President Harris are going to have to deal with is the idea that 75% of the American people see them as being illegitimately elected. And I think that is honestly going to take a lot longer than 4 years to fix. That's going to take a lot longer. It may take more than 4 elections to get the normalcy of this thing close to what we might remember it as.
It's such an important point. It's a conversation I'm sure we'll all continue to have. Thank you for being a part of it, Robert Gibbs and Michael Steele. We're going to go back to Steve Kornacki at the big board. Steve.
All right, Nicole, we're kind of waiting in a holding pattern here. I'll call up the remaining vote bubbles here. And again, it's just the one that dwarfs everything right now. That is emanating from DeKalb County, overwhelmingly Democratic DeKalb County. We expect, frankly, any minute now, based on what they've been telling us, to get not all, but a big chunk of their early vote to be reported out there. Again, statewide right now, David Perdue's lead over John Ossoff sits at 108,000 votes. Kelly Loeffler's lead over Raphael Warnock, 78,000. In other words, Warnock, running 30,000 votes better than Ossoff statewide. That's a very relevant thing to keep in mind as we're waiting on these DeKalb numbers, because both Democrats are going to get a big boost here. But Warnock is 30,000 votes ahead of Ossoff already, just in terms of trying to catch Kelly Loeffler. So keep that in mind. Again, 180,000 or so votes that will be released, early votes that are yet to be released from DeKalb County. I can tell you the early vote. Now, two things about this. Democratic County, we've been saying, the early vote is on the more Democratic side. The early vote in DeKalb County back in the November election was 82% Biden in DeKalb County. It was 82% for Joe Biden was the early vote. That's what we're waiting on right now, if that's a benchmark for you. Now, Democrats felt, for a variety of reasons, they did a little bit better in the early vote this time around than they did back in November. In a county like DeKalb, it's hard to do much better, but maybe they could even tick that up. We'll see. Could they tick it up to 84%? But in other words, you're sitting on 170, 180,000 or so votes to be reported out, where I think you can certainly expect Democrats to be getting at least 80% of those votes and probably more. And so, again, if you start to do the math on that, 108,000 vote lead for David Perdue statewide, that could certainly be eroded and erased right there. And certainly a 78,000 vote lead for Kelly Loeffler statewide could be eroded and erased right there. Now, DeKalb is not the only place with outstanding vote left in the state. You can call your attention here. This is Columbia County. This is outside Augusta, Richmond County. Now, what's left in Columbia County, if you have a long memory and you've been paying close attention tonight, you might remember the start of the night we said Columbia County is one of these counties that holds its mail vote and its early vote until the very end of the night. So that is what they're doing right now. They are holding on to their mail and their early vote, and that is going to be the last thing released. So what you see in Columbia right now is Kelly Loeffler getting 75% of the vote. This has been the most pro-Republican vote that's been reported in Columbia County so far. The vote that's yet to come is going to be more Democratic. Republicans will probably still win it, but to give you a sense of it, the early vote, the mail vote in Columbia County back in November, Joe Biden got about 40% of it. So I think what's to come in Columbia County, if November's a guide, Democrats are probably going to get about 40% of it. It's one of these counties that's been trending a bit away from Republicans. If it goes really well for Democrats, maybe they get 41 or 42%. That's Columbia County right there. We're also looking at Cobb County here, and I just want to check. I believe we still have same-day vote coming in Cobb County. Now, this is a little dicey because you see Warnock here leads, in Cobb County, 56.7%. Ossoff leads in Cobb County, 55.8%. The same-day vote in Cobb County, remember, same day, most pro-Republican. We've been seeing Republicans actually getting more votes in these updates, these same-day vote updates out of Cobb County. We've been seeing Republicans getting more votes than Democrats in the same-day update. So even though Ossoff is leading the county and I think will win the county, even though Warnock is leading the county and will win the county, I think there's a potential here for Republicans to squeeze more votes out of what's left in Cobb County than the Democrats. So again, for the Democrats, it's DeKalb County. You can see it here, the bubble. If I squeeze it a little bit, you can see Savannah, Chatham County. There could be some Democratic votes here as well. If you go, that was not supposed to happen that dramatically. If you go over to the other side of the state, here you go, Columbus, that's Muskogee County. There could be some Democratic votes there. So there are some other opportunities here. But there are opportunities for Republicans as well. So, really, to me, this is setting up as how big is that bang that Democrats get out of DeKalb County? What kind of a pad would that give, to Warnock? What kind of a pad could that give to Ossoff? Could they squeeze a little bit more, out of Savannah, a little bit more out of Columbus? And could they absorb the hits that are left from, a bubble like this in in Columbia County, again, where I think Republicans will probably get about 60% of that bubble. Democrats will get about 40% of that bubble. And the votes do exist here, certainly in DeKalb County. The votes do exist on paper to get the Democrats into the lead in these races, despite these numbers. I mean, you're seeing a 3-point margin here for David Perdue. We've just been seeing red counties around the state kind of complete their counts and just pad that Perdue margin. And what that means is the bubbles around the states get smaller and smaller, and the DeKalb bubble gets bigger and bigger. And, here we are, 10:40. They said by 11 o'clock they think, we will have a significant update there from DeKalb County. And I think whenever we get that significant update, these statewide numbers are going to change substantially.
Steve, I want to give my colleagues who are all champing at the bit a chance to ask you questions here as well, but I'm going to jump the line and go first. The second largest bubble of outstanding vote is, as you said, in Cobb County. And while that will likely be a Democratic county in both of these races, excuse me, the remaining Cobb County vote, you think will be the more Republican tilted vote. My question is, how many of those votes are there? How much outstanding vote do you think there is in Cobb County?
That's what we are trying to figure out right now. And Adam, do you have that number? In Columbia County, but Cobb County. 50,000 early. Okay, that's the thing. So the bubble is big here in Cobb County because you have same-day vote that's finishing up, and you have early vote in Cobb County.
Okay.
So you've got two things driving this bubble. One of those things is favorable to Republicans. Like I say, these same-day updates. And I'm just looking what we have left here for precincts. There are some precincts left, but there's an early vote here that should favor. If you just look again, the early vote in Cobb County was 53% Democratic back in November. 53% for Biden back in November. So the opportunity here for Democrats still to gain with early vote in Cobb County, for Republicans to gain with same-day vote. The ball game in DeKalb is basically early vote, and it's early mail vote in Columbia.
Okay. So even though that's 50,000 votes in Cobb, likely to be sort of an even split there because it's early and same day.
Yeah, that could be an even split. And Democrats, depending on how it breaks, Democrats could net votes out of there still.
Joy, did you want to jump in here and ask Steve something?
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking earlier. I want to kind of go back to the discussion we were having earlier about Democratic versus Republican turnout, because that's really been kind of the focus, is who actually, hit their targets in terms of turnout. Now that we're factoring in more counties, do you have a better sense of that?
So, yeah, we were looking at North Georgia during the night, some of those rural counties, and there are several of these counties where I think that Republican turnout was down, 15 or so +%. But I think Republicans did, we paid a lot of attention to Cherokee County. Take a look here. I think this is the final vote in Cherokee County. Republicans actually accomplished their mission in Cherokee County. They accomplished their mission, I think, in Forsyth County. So in some of these places, they got what they were looking for in some of the bigger sort of bedroom community Republican counties in the state. But there are a fair number of these sort of more rural Republican counties where we saw the turnout was down more, appears to be down more than it is in some of these Democratic areas. So I think there is a question here. We got to look a little bit closer when they're all in, but I think there is potentially a question here about that core Republican base, kind of outside of the metro area here. How motivated was it?
Yeah, and can I ask, just to follow up on that, Perdue, because he does have a history, the family has a history, he was always considered the stronger of the two Republican candidates because he does have a, sort of a deeper history in the state. How is he doing now versus how he did in the important counties to Republicans versus November?
Well, you can tell. I mean, look, where David Perdue in November did the best relative to Trump, and when we say there were split ticket vote, it was Fulton County. So, I mean, you take a look here, Fulton County, again, biggest in the state, Atlanta suburbs. So you're seeing right now, actually, this is, let me just confirm, Adam, is this it for Fulton? We're going to check on that. But if this is it, then what we said at the start of the night, did Democrats in Fulton County get to that Biden number and exceed it? And what you're seeing right now with what appears to be all or close to all the vote in Fulton County is Warnock a little bit more than a point better than Joe Biden's number. So there's Warnock at 73.7. And then in the Perdue race, Ossoff at 72.9, Biden at 72.6. I think this is key because in this county in November, Ossoff was under 70%. He was 69 and change. So Ossoff ran about 3 points below Biden. Or if you will, Perdue ran about 3 points above Trump in Fulton County back in November. And where you saw the most pronounced split ticket voting in Fulton County was in the suburban portions of Fulton County. You saw it in Roswell, Alpharetta, you saw it in Buckhead. That's where you saw the most voters who went out and voted Biden and then voted Republicans for the Senate. What you're seeing here with what appears to be all or close to all the vote in Fulton County is that not only did Ossoff get to that Biden level that Biden hit in November, he exceeded it. He's a few tenths of a point above that. So again, that split ticket phenomenon that was helping Perdue in a place like Fulton County, you're not seeing that right here. You're seeing Ossoff get to the Biden number, and in fact, you're seeing, I have the marker selected, and in fact, you're seeing Warnock exceed it, by a full point. You saw that, we're still waiting on Cobb County. We saw split ticket voting in Cobb County, but Cobb County, Fulton County, Gwinnett County, there are a few others, but that is where you saw the most split ticket voting. And that's why one of the big questions for me coming into this election tonight, for the Democrats was, are Democrats getting the Biden number in a Fulton County, or are they getting the Ossoff number? It seems like a trivial difference, 72.6 and like 69.7. It seems like a very trivial difference. But I think that was one of the biggest reasons that Biden won Georgia in November and Ossoff was short of Perdue in the vote count back in November. That 3-point difference in Fulton County added up to a big difference in the vote count. And what you're seeing here is Democrats are ahead of that Biden number. So they're not lagging it. They're actually doing a little bit better than it in this vote count tonight. So that is, at the start of the night, that's why I was stressing this Biden number. If Democrats could get a point or so above that in Fulton County, that'd be a very, very good sign for them. And potentially, we got to look much closer at this, but potentially, it raises a question. Those split ticket voters, the folks who turned out back in November and said, I don't like Donald Trump, but I don't want to vote for the Democrats for the Senate. I'm going to vote for the Republicans for the Senate. Those voters existed. They existed in the Fulton County suburbs back in November. Did they look at the last 2 months? Did they look at Trump's behavior? You could come up with your own theory here. It just raises the possibility that they took the measure of the last 2 months and said, well, I can't vote against Trump. He's not on the ballot, but I can vote against his party. I can vote against the candidates he's endorsing. Did those split ticket voters just vote Democratic in Fulton County, in the Atlanta suburbs?
Mathematically, it's also just a really good reminder that we're watching these little wiggles on either side of the Biden standard from November. And in small, relatively unpopulated counties, it doesn't mean that much if it's a point or a tenth of a point one way or the other. But when you're talking about a county that's got hundreds of thousands of voters, you get these Senate candidates outpacing Biden by a point or a tenth of a point or 2/10 of a point, and it's tens of thousands of votes.
It adds up. You got
potentially
it.
Determinative. Lawrence O'Donnell, our colleague, wants to jump in here. Lawrence, did you want to ask Steve a thing?
Yeah, Steve, there's a mystery number that's been up on the board all night that we're all staring at and trying to figure out, and that is what explains the maybe 30,000 vote difference between Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. Why is Reverend Warnock outpolling John Ossoff? Who goes into that voting booth and votes for only one of the Democrats?
It's a great question, and we came into the night with all sorts of theories about if you see it, where would you see it? Was there a geographic explanation? But I mean, I'm just picking a county at random here, a hugely Republican county. Warnock gets 21.3% in Jackson County. Ossoff gets 20%. This is just uniform. It's across the board. It's not specific geographically. It's not that there's a core, Warnock vote in one place and it's just not there for Ossoff. We're just seeing consistently 0.4, 0.5, 0.8, Ossoff lagging behind Warnock, and we're just seeing it across the state. I mean, is it about Ossoff and Warnock? Is it about Perdue and Loeffler? Is Perdue a more appealing candidate to a certain slice of voter than Loeffler is? Is Perdue just able to get a few more votes than Loeffler is? Should we be looking at it that way? Should we be looking at it as an Ossoff-Warnock thing? But I think the thing that has struck me, because it's been so steady and so consistent, I think we first flagged it, when it was about 30% of the vote in statewide. It's been the story. Almost every county we've been looking at, if you've been following along, if you're watching, you see this every time we click on one of these counties. 27.3 in Harris County for Ossoff, 27 point. That's one of the smaller ones, 27.5, 0.2 of 1 point. But Warnock has just been running consistently ahead of him, it seems, across the board.
In terms of the relative performance of Warnock and Ossoff, is it look to you, broadly speaking, that they are both either matching or outpacing Biden, it's just that Warnock is doing so by more? Or are they on opposite sides of the Biden standard?
Yeah, I mean, so let's take a look. Fulton County, we can revisit right here. And again, my producer was telling me in the last few minutes there are a few precincts we're not quite sure this is all the vote in Fulton County. It's very, very close. But again, the Biden standard 72-6. Warnock comfortably above that at this point with this much vote and 1.1 points above it. And there's Ossoff teetering above it.
Yeah.
And you were saying, Rachel, 72.9 in Fulton and 73.7 in Fulton, almost a full point in a county that's 10% of the state. Yeah, that can add up. A margin here for Warnock of 205,000 votes, a margin for Ossoff of 198,000. That's a difference of 7,000 votes between them in that county. So, I think we see in the Atlanta metro area, let's see if we can pull up another one here. Clayton County, look, Ossoff is above the Biden number in Clayton County, 88.4. Warnock's only 1/10 of a point above him there. Warnock, 1/10 of a point above. They're both above the Biden number there. I think the Democrats have been getting numbers out of the Atlanta metro area that they wanted to see. These numbers so far that they've been seeing are right where you would think, if Democrats put out a map, exceed Biden, they've been exceeding Biden where they need to. We showed you a number of these small rural counties with large black populations. We were seeing Democrats 2-3 points above the Biden number in a lot of these counties. The percentage of the vote in a lot of these counties was significant, black populations. Again, you were seeing Warnock and Ossoff both above the Biden number, but Warnock just a little bit above, where Ossoff was. So they were both exceeding it there, but Warnock was exceeding it by a little bit more. When I look at this tonight, where was there bad news so far for Democrats? Look, the worst news for Democrats could be if they don't get what they're hoping for out of DeKalb here when that comes in. But otherwise, Cherokee County, this ended up being bad news for Democrats tonight. With what's in so far, Republicans have actually exceeded the Trump number here. And I think they got very high same-day turnout, in Cherokee County, in Forsyth County, big Republican bedroom community county. Again, 2 points above the Trump number there. So Republicans sort of in these exurbs, not all of them, but some of these sort of big population dense, exurban counties, Republicans are hitting pretty good numbers there. So it's not everywhere has been good news for Democrats tonight. But again, Atlanta metro and rural counties with significant black populations, Democrats have exceeded Biden. I think you've seen that pretty steadily tonight.
What I'm seeing when I look at that is that there are some parallel situations. I was just going down in my notes through the big population, most Republican counties. And as you're pointing out there, in Cherokee County, in Forsyth County, I'd be interested in looking at like Hall County and Paulding County and stuff too. But we are seeing in those places that the Republican Senate candidates are outpacing Trump a little bit. But on the other side of the ledger, the counties in which Democrats are outpacing Biden a little bit are much bigger counties with many more votes, where 2/10 or 3/10 above the Biden standard is going to be a larger number in absolute terms when you get down to it. And let us not forget that the Biden standard was a winning number in Georgia, and the Trump standard was a losing number in Georgia. And so it just feels to me like Republicans have to put it together from so many different places right now, whereas Democrats just got to look in one place, because when those numbers come in DeKalb, that's going to be the ballgame.
Yeah, and I mean, again, one way to look at this too, I think, Rachel, along the lines of what you're saying here, is it's a 98,000 vote lead for David Perdue. Again, it's DeKalb. We don't need to repeat it for the millionth time right here. But remember that Jon Ossoff back in November finished 88,000 votes under David Perdue. When everything was in, Perdue had 88,000 more votes than Jon Ossoff. I don't know how this is exactly all going to shake out here, but I don't think Ossoff is, even if Ossoff loses this, it's not going to be by 88,000 votes. Ossoff has improved since November. I think that's very clear. And Ossoff has improved since November. Ossoff has improved since November. It's also clear Warnock is going to finish 25 to 30,000 votes, it looks like, better than Ossoff in this thing. So Ossoff's made strides. Warnock is outpacing Ossoff. So Democrats made up ground from November. We'll see again with DeKalb if it ends up being enough to put them over the top in the state. But what we're saying about the half a point here, the point here, the 2 points in these